The family teetered on the edge of bankruptcy, and I was forced into a marriage with Charlie Lawson, a notorious big shot in New York. Rumors surrounded him like smoke, violent, ruthless, unpredictable. On the night of our engagement, he cornered me against the wall. His towering frame blocked all escape, one hand lifting my chin with a firm grip. His tone was mocking, dangerously low. "Say something sweet and I'll let you go." I froze. My brain stalled. After a long, awkward silence, I squeezed out the best line I could think of. "Well, bro, wishing you all the best? Welcome to He History channel. Subscribe to follow all our latest adventures." Story begins. I couldn't for the life of me understand why the family had decided I, a fully grown man, needed to be the one entering a political marriage. And not just with anyone, but with that Charlie Lawson, the infamous New York heir known for his explosive temper and ruthless ways. Completely insane. I'd cut ties with my father the moment I turned 18 and ran off to the countryside. So imagine my confusion when one second I was accepting an invitation from my cousin, who I got along with pretty well, to attend his engagement party, and the next second, I was shoved into the center of a crowd by bodyguards. Then came the host's booming announcement. "Let us congratulate Mr. Lawson and young Scott on their engagement." My gaze drifted to the man beside me, tall, sharp-featured, clad in an impeccably tailored black suit. He looked strangely familiar. Had we met before? That man was Charlie Lawson. And young Scott was apparently me, Kevin Scott. My cousin was nowhere to be found. It took the sea of enthusiastic, unfamiliar relatives cheering around me for the realization to fully sink in. This engagement banquet was for me. My supposed father, Justin Scott, stood at the front with a stone-cold face, watching everything like a hawk. The bodyguards at his side twitched, as if waiting for any excuse to drag me off and execute me on the spot. I swept my stiff gaze across the crowd, mostly relatives I saw once a year, if that. I'd heard whispers 2 months ago about our family's financial troubles. I just never imagined they'd sell me off this way. Under the guise of a friendly meal, no less. Absolute bastards. I clenched my fists, forcing a polite smile onto my face. The Scott family's empire had only gotten this far thanks to everything my mother sacrificed back in the day. If we really went bankrupt, she'd be heartbroken, even in the afterlife. I snuck a glance at Charlie Lawson. He was already looking at me. The moment our eyes met, sparks practically flew in the air. I quickly looked away. Seeing him here, Charlie Lawson of all people, left me utterly baffled. Wait a minute. Was he gay? There'd never been any rumors about that. Could it be that he was also being forced into this engagement? The thought lingered in my mind. It didn't seem entirely impossible. The host droned on, offering congratulations while aunts and uncles began raising their glasses. The Lawson family and the Scotts, joining hands like this, it's a wonderful thing. "Come on, you two lovebirds, stop standing there, have a drink." They chuckled as they clinked glasses, some waving at me to toast along. I was starting to feel dizzy. Meanwhile, Charlie Lawson stood untouched by the chaos, people keeping a respectful distance as if he carried an invisible force field. My father, ever the considerate one, note the sarcasm, handed me a glass of wine from the table. The red liquid shimmered gently at the rim of the glass. "Drink a little with your uncles," he said coolly. "Don't start throwing tantrums at a time like this. A marriage alliance is serious business." His tone was calm, but laced with the commanding edge of someone used to being obeyed. I scoffed silently, just about to speak, when the silent, icy Charlie Lawson suddenly turned his gaze toward us. He spoke with a calm voice, but the authority in it was unmistakable. "And is that how Mr. Scott usually speaks to my lawfully betrothed?" My hand froze halfway to the wine glass, eyes snapping to him. His words were like a grenade thrown into the room. The subtle protective edge in his tone wasn't lost on anyone. Not even me. This guy was unexpectedly decent. With just one line, Justin Scott's expression darkened. He clenched his wine glass so tightly his aged knuckles turned white. Being rebuked in public by Charlie Lawson clearly stung. I couldn't help stealing another glance at Charlie. He stood there, arms folded, calm and composed as he stared Justin down. The relatives on his side didn't even flinch, clearly used to his antics. On my side, though, silence fell like a heavy curtain. No one urged me to drink anymore, lest they became Charlie Lawson's next target. One by one, people began to quietly scatter. Charlie remained rooted to the spot like his shoes were glued to the floor. I slipped away to a quiet corner and scanned the area. Once I was sure no one was watching, I turned to the dessert table. There were plenty of options, but my eyes locked onto a tray of mango cakes. I grabbed one. There were knives on the table too, but I ignored them for now, picking up a plate and eating at my own pace. Forget the engagement for now. I came for the food. By the time I polished off my third mango cake, the party was winding down. Guests were trickling out. I was still happily nibbling away when suddenly, a pair of large, cold hands grabbed the back of my collar and yanked me upright. That's enough. Let's go home. The grip had some strength to it, and the chill of his fingertips against the back of my neck sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. I whirled around with full indignation, ready to snap, when I realized that voice sounded oddly familiar. I turned and saw Charlie Lawson calmly staring at me. He didn't ease up at all, still gripping me like I was a stray cat being dragged off. The hell? I muttered with a mouthful of cake. Can I finish this first? Wanna eat that? Charlie Lawson's eyes flickered with what looked like mild exasperation, but it vanished as quickly as it came. Your dad gave you to me as collateral, he said, perfectly serious, like he was quoting some clause from a legal contract. You're coming home with me. Before I could even curse out a proper, "What the hell?" Charlie calmly stepped aside, giving me a clear view of the man standing just a few feet ahead, Justin Scott. Ask him yourself, Charlie said, his tone flat but laced with quiet certainty. See if you're supposed to come with me. I narrowed my eyes at Justin Scott. He gave a faint nod, then spoke with calm detachment. You're engaged. Naturally, you'll be staying at Mr. Lawson's residence. Then, as if that weren't enough, he added, I still remember you and Mr. Lawson were middle school classmates. Middle school classmates? Me and Charlie Lawson? Now that he mentioned it, yeah, I guess that did ring a bell. But Justin Scott didn't give me time to dig up the memory. He pressed on, words laced with implication. You know how things are at home. You wouldn't want your mother's legacy to go down in flames because of us, would you? He mentioned my mom, Yunshu. Hearing her name from his mouth felt like the cruelest mockery. Kevin. Charlie echoed my name, trying it out. He gave my shoulder a light pat, almost playfully. Let's go. My teeth ground together. Bastards. Every last one of them. I shot Justin Scott a vicious glare, shoved the last bite of mango cake into my mouth, and slammed the plate down. Charlie was already walking ahead, glancing back now and then to make sure I was following. I deliberately dragged my feet, seething with every step and cursing him along with the rest of them in my head. When we finally made it to the front gates, Charlie clicked open a sleek Rolls-Royce and walked to the passenger side. He even held the door for me, one hand resting casually on the frame, his long legs perfectly posed like a magazine ad. Get in. I gave a cold, filthy rich people. Once inside, the car wasn't exactly cramped, but it felt suffocating with just the two of us in the space. I buckled myself in. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Charlie's annoyingly perfect face in the rearview mirror. Against my better judgment, I blurted out, Hey, were you forced into this too? Charlie gave a faint nod, a low escaping his throat as confirmation. No wonder the Lawson clan had been on high alert during the banquet. No one dared even talk to him. Were they afraid he'd run off? For the first time, I found him somewhat agreeable. Even New York's infamous big shot couldn't escape an arranged marriage. But that raised another question. There were plenty of heiresses in New York who matched the Lawson status. Why the hell did they pick a guy? I couldn't figure it out, and Charlie didn't seem interested in explaining. The car fell into silence. By the time we reached South Link Garden, a prestigious gated villa district, he tapped the brakes and said, We're here. I slipped out of the passenger seat and looked around. Beautiful landscaping. High-end security. Quiet luxury. I hadn't lived in a place like this since I cut ties with Justin Scott. "You'll stay here from now on," Charlie said as he led the way. "We'll register the marriage in a few days." "What?" I stopped mid-step. Did I hear that right? That fast? He glanced over his shoulder and added, without an ounce of hesitation, "It's a family alliance. Neither of us has a say." There was an odd sincerity in his voice that made my irritation waver, just a little. "Fine," I muttered. When we stepped through the front gate, I got my first look at the house, and my jaw nearly dropped. Charlie Lawson's villa had a garden. And when I say garden, I mean vegetable garden. There were mango trees on both sides of the porch, and the open yard was planted with cucumbers, cherry tomatoes, and even a couple of sunflowers. Practical. Surprisingly wholesome. Honestly, I was kind of impressed. I froze in front of the tomato vines, eyes practically sparkling. "Dude, you've got taste." Charlie's footsteps stopped behind me. I turned to see his usually composed face laced with confusion. "What did you just call me? Dude? What? Is that not okay?" He stared at me like I'd just insulted his ancestors. What was I supposed to call him, comrade? He gave a sharp little laugh, dry and icy, then immediately turned away and started unlocking the front door. The hell is up with this guy? Seriously, is there something wrong with him? Just as he pushed open the door, a woman in her 50s stepped out wearing a dark apron. Her smile was warm and welcoming. "Mr. Lawson, madam, you're just in time for dinner." "Madam." I choked so hard I almost coughed up the mango cake I hadn't even eaten. I raised a hand quickly, waving in panic. "Mary, just call me by my name, okay?" Calling a guy, madam? Absolutely not. Mary looked a little unsure as she glanced at Charlie Lawson. Charlie didn't so much as pause on his way into the house, voice cool and dismissive as he walked in without turning back. "Call him whatever you want." Mary let out a warm, practiced chuckle and quickly smoothed things over. "All right then, I'll call you Kevin." I nodded. That sounded perfectly reasonable to me. She motioned me in as she chatted cheerfully. "You can just call me Mary. Come in, dinner's ready." I was actually a bit hungry, so I didn't argue. I smiled, a little softened by her hospitality. "Thanks." Charlie stood near the door, tugging off his tie with one hand and undoing the buttons at the cuffs of his white shirt. I glanced over. Under that crisp shirt, his muscle lines were lean and defined. There was a hint of raised fabric where his abs were tight and powerful. I cursed silently. "How the hell do you even get a body like that?" "I'm not hungry," Charlie said coolly, then turned and took the stairs 2 at a time. Mary didn't seem fazed at all. She led me to the dining table with a motherly smile and even handed me a bowl of rice. "Don't worry, Kevin. Mr. Lawson's probably just swamped with work." I nodded with a polite, but my brain was still stuck on one thing. If he hated the engagement so much, why didn't he throw a fit with his family instead? Still, the dishes on the table were all my favorites: sweet and sour ribs, buttery garlic shrimp. I dove in like a man starved and inhaled 2 full bowls of rice without stopping. Mary actually started to look concerned. "Kevin, slow down. There's plenty more where that came from." I couldn't help but laugh. I really did look like someone who hadn't eaten in days. Well, not far from the truth. After cutting ties with Justin Scott, I had no money. I'd been barely scraping by. Honestly, I'd come to that engagement banquet just hoping to score a decent meal. Instead, I got sold off, and only managed to eat one tiny mango cake. After dinner, Mary kindly showed me around. "This is Mr. Lawson's study. He's probably working there now. Your room's the one at the far left on the 2nd floor. Bathroom's right next door." I nodded. "Got it." Once she left, I headed up alone and opened the door to my room. Holy hell. It was huge. Bigger than any room I'd ever lived in. The palette leaned cool, dark wood furniture, minimalist decor, everything immaculately clean and well kept. I sat on the bed and suddenly remembered a major problem. I hadn't brought a single change of clothes. I'd assumed I'd be heading home tonight. Who knew I'd be staying? I sighed. Then my gaze drifted toward 2 closets standing across the room. Mary said everything in here was fair game, right? So borrowing something to wear should be fine. I picked one of the closets at random and opened it, only to discover something strange. The clothes inside were brand new. Some still had their packaging intact, neatly stacked in rows. Luxury. Pure, unnecessary luxury. And in the lower left corner, there was a sleek black box. I had no idea what it was. Ignoring it, I reached for a white lounge set, holding it up to myself for size. Wait a second. It fit me. Perfectly. Weird. I shook it off and headed to the bathroom to wash up. Half an hour later, I emerged from the steam, body freshly scrubbed with a mango-scented body wash. I glanced back at the bottle. Charlie Lawson really had taste. Mango was my absolute favorite. Fresh and clean, with nothing else to do, I pulled back the duvet and sat on the bed, taking out my phone. I decided to re-add Justin Scott. I had questions. Like, how the hell does a perfectly good company tank its cash flow overnight? When I got to the notes section for the friend request, I paused. I typed, "This is your son." Then deleted it. Too weird. I sent the request with no message. An hour and a half passed. No response. Not even a glance. Frustrated, I yanked the blanket over myself and forced my eyes shut. The light stayed on. 30 minutes passed, and I was still wide awake, staring at the ceiling. The door swung open with a low groan. I shot up, blanket flying. My eyes adjusted. Charlie Lawson. Shirtless. Wearing only a bathrobe around his waist. His wet hair dripped beads of water down his neck, tracing every ridge of his chest, sliding over sharp abs and a dangerously well-defined V-line that was even more intense than what I saw earlier. I clutched the blanket like a lifeline. Eyes wide, voice hoarse, I blurted, "Why are you in my room, and why aren't you wearing clothes?" Charlie raised an eyebrow at me, his tone perfectly flat. "This is my room." Ah. I blinked, brain scrambling to process. Mary said the room at the far left was mine. I didn't mishear, right? Charlie leaned lazily against the wall and added, like it was the most natural thing in the world, "Of course, it's your room too." We're sleeping in the same room? I was so shocked my voice shot up an octave. What else? Charlie Lawson shot me a sharp look, like I just asked the stupidest question on earth. "Have you ever seen husbands sleep in separate rooms?" Okay, fine, technically he wasn't wrong. But we were not like other couples. Two grown men sharing a bed isn't awkward to you? I tried reasoning with him, appealing to logic, human decency, anything. Charlie didn't blink. He took a slow step toward me, towering above, a predator closing in on its prey. His presence alone was almost enough to pin me in place. Then, calmly, casually, he dropped a bomb. "You sleep on the bed. I sleep on you." I jerked backward instinctively, certain I'd misheard. Wait, what? Before I could even get the words out, Charlie reached out and grabbed my chin. Not hard, but firm enough that I couldn't shake him off. His palm was warm, the same mango-scented body wash clinging to his skin. Weirdly familiar. Weirdly intimate. "Stop what?" he asked, voice smooth and low. He lifted one leg, resting it on the edge of the bed, closing the distance between us. Panic flooded my chest. I grabbed the nearest pillow and launched it at his face, full force. I'm a guy, damn it. But Charlie was faster. He caught my wrist mid-swing, and with one tug, the pillow slipped from my grip and fell to the floor. What the hell? Why is he so freaking strong? I gaped, speechless, as Charlie calmly kept hold of my chin, clearly amused. He tilted his head and said with a lazy smile, "Tell you what, say something nice and I'll let you go." There was a teasing edge to his tone now, almost like he was trying to lighten the mood. Realizing brute force wasn't going to work, I racked my brain for anything that might save me. I cleared my throat, looked him in the eye, and tried. "Well, wishing you all the best?" Silence. And then from above me, his voice dropped like ice water. "I swear to God I should have killed you." I could feel the situation spiraling fast. Reasonably speaking, it seemed like Charlie Lawson had been forced into this marriage and was now taking it out on me. I scrambled to change tactics, grabbing his hand in a last-ditch effort. Bro, listen, peace brings prosperity. Live long and healthy, yeah? Charlie's expression darkened by the second. He looked like he was going to blow. Finally he snapped. Kevin Scott. Shut up. He took a deep breath, visibly trying to calm himself, then leveled his gaze at me again. I'll give you one more chance. Say it again. That did it. This man was unhinged. Everyone knows, you don't fight crazy. You survive it. I forced myself to breathe and speak in a calm, soothing voice. Wait, just give me a sec. Then, still holding eye contact, I reached slowly toward the nightstand and grabbed my phone. Charlie's expression was now pure suspicion. I unlocked it, opened ChatGPT, and, just to save time, turned off deep thinking mode. Then typed at lightning speed. What do men like to be complimented on? I skimmed the first few results, then looked up at Charlie's glacial black eyes and blurted, "You're in great shape." 2 awkward laughs slipped out of me as a peace offering. Charlie stared at me like I was missing several brain cells. Then, to my surprise, he actually laughed too, dry and sarcastic. Heh. But at least it worked. His mood seemed to stabilize. He grabbed the blanket from my hand, flopped down beside me on the bed, and didn't even look at me. Sleep. Simple. Direct. Almost warm? I let out the breath I didn't know I was holding. But when I turned and saw his still dripping hair soaking the pillow, I hesitated. I wanted to ask, "Can you dry your hair first before sleeping?" But I swallowed the words. God knows what else he'd take offense to. Instead, I tugged the blanket toward my side and scooted as far from him as the bed would allow. Surprisingly, I slept well. When I woke, Charlie Lawson was gone. The bed beside me was empty and cold. Groggy, I reached for my phone. Sunday, 9:30 a.m. Do COs work on Sundays? Then it hit me, if Charlie was gone, that was perfect. Because staring at each other all morning would have been unbearable. I rolled around in bed twice, then got up to wash up. Inside the bathroom I paused. There were 2 of everything. Toothbrushes, towels, even matching bottles of mouthwash. It was like someone had planned for me to be living here. Before I could think too much about it, Mary's voice echoed from downstairs. Kevin, breakfast is ready. You can eat with Mr. Lawson. Charlie Lawson hadn't eaten either? Mary stood by the staircase, looking at me with a kind smile. I nodded quickly, murmuring a few "okay" as I made my way to the bathroom. By the time I stepped into the living room, fresh and clean, Charlie was already seated at the dining table. He wasn't in a suit today, just a plain black casual shirt and slacks, which made him seem less like a mafia heir and more like a regular human being. When he saw me, he wordlessly pulled out the chair next to his and said in a neutral tone, "Sit. Eat." It still felt weird sitting next to Charlie Lawson after everything that happened yesterday, but he'd even pulled out the chair for me. If I refused, I'd look like the petty one. So I sat down, trying hard to pretend the prior night hadn't happened and keep my expression as natural as possible. I barely had time to settle into the seat when Mary came over with a plate of steamed shrimp. She placed it between us and looked at us both with a grin that was a little too knowing. "Mr. Lawson and Kevin, you two seem very close." "Ah." I blinked, utterly confused, and turned toward her just about to ask what she meant. She laughed behind her hand and added, "Wearing matching outfits and everything." Matching? I looked down at myself, then glanced over at Charlie. She wasn't wrong. He was wearing black. I was in white. But the styles were identical. Even the English letters printed across the chest were the same. I mentally grumbled. Matching couples outfits? Seriously? Couldn't it just be father and son outfits? I instinctively looked over at Charlie again and accidentally locked eyes with him. He was holding a peeled shrimp in one hand. And under my gaze, he silently placed it into my bowl. I froze. Charlie, of course, looked completely unfazed. With those long, pale fingers of his, he picked up the next shrimp and calmly began peeling it. Mary, delighted by the harmonious domestic scene, went off humming to serve more dishes. My face heated up instantly. What the hell? I'm not a kid. I don't need someone peeling my food. I cleared my throat, trying to halt him. I can do it myself, really. No need to trouble you. Charlie didn't even look up. He replied coolly, then peel some for me too. Fair's fair. I stared at him, beginning to suspect this man had no idea what kind of dynamic he was implying. Who even peels shrimp for each other like that? Father and son? Some bizarre domestic drama? The more I thought about it, the more absurd it felt. But the peeled shrimp in my bowl kept piling up, and I didn't have the heart to argue anymore. So I picked up a slice of ham and placed it on Charlie's plate in return. Fair trade, right? He didn't hesitate. He just ate it. Then, after chewing, added a quiet, "Thanks." That one word instantly made me look rude for not saying it earlier. I squinted at him suspiciously. And maybe it was just my imagination, but I swear I saw the corners of his lips twitch upward. Almost like he was smiling. That breakfast was torture. The shrimp tasted like nothing. I'd never felt so awkward eating perfectly good food. Luckily, Charlie was a busy man. As soon as he finished, he returned to his study on the second floor. The moment he disappeared upstairs, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. The tension melted away like morning fog. After tidying up the table a bit, I decided to step outside and check out the vegetable garden. Mary was out there watering the plants, bent over and weaving through the rows of tomato vines. I'd always had a weird fondness for gardening, so I walked right up. "Let me help." At first, Mary waved me off, insisting she could manage, but I was persistent. Eventually, she gave in and handed me the watering can. I looked around, pleased with the thriving little plants. The green vines sparkled in the sunlight, dotted with baby tomatoes and cucumber blossoms. I loved it instantly. Mary smiled as she chatted. "Mr. Lawson used to plant rare flowers here, and I was always scared of stepping on something expensive. Then one day, he had everything replaced with vegetables." I paused. "Wait, you mean this place was recently turned into a garden?" Mary nodded cheerfully. "Oh yes, just last week. Those mango trees too, they used to be shrubs." She rambled on about the redesign, but I was no longer listening. "Last week? That was when I got the invitation to the engagement party. And Charlie Lawson's garden makeover happened at the same time? What a coincidence." My brain offered up a bold, ridiculous theory. He redesigned the garden, for me? I slowly turned to look up at the study window. Sure enough, Charlie Lawson was standing there, tall and still as a sculpture. He hadn't pulled the curtains. From his angle, he could clearly see me. I raised my hand and gave a little wave. Charlie blinked, then nodded once in return. I kept watering the vegetables, thinking, Charlie Lawson wasn't nearly as cold and ruthless as the rumors claimed. After I'd finished tending the little garden, I headed back inside, deciding to finally ask him about the Scott family. Figured I'd better do it while he wasn't busy. Without hesitation, I bolted up the stairs and made straight for the study. The door was slightly ajar. Strange. Did Charlie forget to close it? As I approached, just about to knock, his cold voice cut through the air like ice. "There's no need to talk about the company nearing bankruptcy. Let it go for now, no need to spread it further." He sounded irritated, on edge. I froze mid-step, hand hovering mid-air. "Wait, what? His company's about to go bankrupt?" I peeked inside. Charlie was holding his phone, jaw tight, brow furrowed, the very picture of stress. I slowly backed away, the only thought in my head, "I'm screwed." Suddenly everything made sense. His mood swings, the tension in his voice lately. I turned around and tiptoed back downstairs, figuring now was definitely not the time to ask about the Scott family. Though, if Charlie Lawson's company was in trouble, then it probably meant the Scott family, entwined as they were, wasn't doing much better either. I disappeared as quietly as I could. What I didn't realize was that I'd moved just a little too fast. And Charlie had seen me. He shifted slightly toward the door as I turned, and from where he stood, he had a perfect view of me walking down the stairs. Then he said into the phone, voice lower and calmer, "Hold on, Peggy. I've got a more important question for you. If your spouse found out that one of your minor subsidiaries went bankrupt, do you think he'd leave?" By the time I got back downstairs, my chest felt heavy. Charlie had been hiding this well, no leaks, no headlines. Not even a whisper in the media. I slumped onto the couch and opened my phone. A notification lit up the screen. You've successfully added Justin Scott as a friend. Perfect timing. I immediately tapped into the chat box and typed, "How's the company doing now?" Justin replied quickly, "We've stabilized things for now." I wanted to ask about Charlie Lawson too, but figured he either wouldn't care or didn't know. I typed and erased Charlie Lawson a few times before deleting it completely. Then, before I could think too much about it, Justin messaged again. "And you? How are you doing? Charlie Lawson seems to like you, doesn't he?" I paused. The first sentence hit harder than I expected. I stared at it for a moment, forgetting the second half even existed. It had been so long since I'd heard anything remotely resembling concern from Justin Scott. The last time was probably after my mother passed away. 2 years later, he claimed to have found true love again and remarried. That woman was terrible. She once shattered my mother's photo frame while Justin was out. When I confronted her, she screamed at me. Justin came home, didn't ask a thing, just slapped me across the face and told me to get out. So I did. I packed up and moved to the countryside house my grandparents left behind. The next thing I heard about him was that his new wife had cheated on him and run off, leaving him fuming and humiliated. I hesitated for a moment, then typed back, "I'm okay." The moment I hit send, I looked up and nearly dropped my phone. Charlie Lawson was standing right in front of me. When had he gotten here? I fumbled to hide my phone and gave a nervous cough. "I've got something later, so I'll be heading out first, yeah?" Charlie didn't move. Just stood there watching me quietly. After a long beat, his gaze finally shifted away. He spoke in his usual flat tone, but his eyes, dark and unreadable, held something else. "Are you coming home for dinner tonight?" I averted my gaze, standing up slowly. "Yeah, probably. Should be." As I reached the door, I turned back quickly. "Can I borrow a car?" Charlie casually pointed to a set of keys hanging beside the TV. "Pick whichever." Feeling way too guilty for some reason, I scrambled over, grabbed a random set and mumbled a quick, "Thanks." He didn't reply. Charlie's car collection was parked in the back lot of the estate. Long rows of sleek vehicles lined up like an auto show. I clicked the fob to figure out which one I'd picked. Beep beep. The sound came from the far corner. I turned and blinked. It was a white electric scooter. A literal golf cart-looking electric vehicle. I stared at it for 3 seconds, then let out a helpless laugh. Seriously? But going back now would be way more embarrassing. Screw it. An electric scooter was still a mode of transport. Besides, it's New York. Traffic is always a nightmare. I shrugged and hopped on. Back at the house, Charlie stood silently at the door, watching the little white scooter roll farther and farther away. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Mary, have the guards drive you for groceries later." Kevin took the scooter. "I don't know when he'll be back." I turned on the GPS. The route was longer than I thought. 2.5 hours by scooter. No big deal. I told myself I'd be fine. After all, I had time, and a decent amount of savings. So I rode on, calculating quietly how long my money could last me if I just didn't come back. Even though Justin Scott had frozen all my bank cards, my mom had left me 2 properties before she passed, both in Miami, both worth a decent amount. Miami was far, sure, but after everything Charlie Lawson had done to help the Scott family, I figured it was only right to help him in return, in whatever way I could. As the saying goes, a life worth living is one lived with loyalty and righteousness. Once I got back to my old place, I went straight to the bedroom and tore through boxes until I found them, 2 crisp, well-preserved property deeds. Of course, putting up 2 houses as collateral wouldn't be enough to save a collapsing company. But maybe it could help, a little. After catching my breath, I grabbed my helmet and got back on the road. Except I didn't get very far. Just a few miles out, I realized the electric scooter was almost out of charge. Getting it juiced up cost more time than expected, and by the time I finally made it back, the sky had gone completely dark. I looked up at the deep navy sky. It was already 7 p.m. A strange sense of unease crept up my spine. I parked the scooter and stood at the gate. Something didn't feel right. When I pushed open the front door, I was met with complete darkness. The living room lights were off, shadows pooling across the floor. I crept up the stairs. The bedroom door was closed, but soft light spilled out from underneath. I didn't hesitate. I pushed the door open. Charlie Lawson was sitting at the edge of the bed, arms resting on his knees. His expression was unreadable. Cold. His dark eyes shimmered with something sharp and unreadable, and for the first time, he actually looked intimidating. I opened my mouth to speak, but he stood up, slow, controlled. Each step deliberate as he walked toward me. You didn't come home for dinner, didn't I? I tried to play dumb, voice wobbly. It didn't work. His face darkened, like he was trying to keep something in check, and not doing a great job. Wait, let me explain. I backed up instinctively, only to bump right into the door. No escape. Go ahead, he said with a low chuckle that didn't reach his eyes. But he clearly had no interest in hearing a word I had to say. He stepped closer. Then, without warning, reached out and cupped my cheek. Not hard, but firm. His breath brushed my collarbone, warm and ticklish. It felt like he was daring me to mess up one more time, just to see what he'd do. I heard your company was in trouble, I blurted out, fumbling through my pockets. So I went back to get something. His gaze flicked down as I pulled out the 2 property deeds and held them out. You can use these, just in case. For emergencies. Charlie froze. He stared at the documents in my hand, clearly taken off guard. I stepped to the side, hoping to put some space between us. But Charlie, predictably, did not react like a normal person. It hit him then that I hadn't stood him up on purpose. And for some reason, that realization made him a quiet, honest, relieved laugh. And then he moved. He lunged forward and kissed me, hard. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't sweet. It was wild. Crushing. Heat surged between us, and I instinctively tried to push him away, muffling a pained sound when I couldn't. His lips claimed mine with zero hesitation, his arms locking around my waist, slamming me against the wall. His voice was hoarse, tinged with desire. There's nothing wrong with the company. You're overthinking it. There's enough money in this house to last you 10 lifetimes. I was still trying to catch my breath, still trying to process what the hell was happening. I wrenched myself away and bolted for the wardrobe. Let me shower first, okay? I'm covered in dust. Charlie raised an eyebrow but didn't speak. That only made it worse. I realized, saying I wanted to shower sounded even more like an invitation. Desperate to change the subject, I pointed randomly at the black box sitting quietly in the wardrobe. Oh hey, what's this? Looks mysterious. Charlie crossed his arms. No hesitation. Open it. I clutched at the lifeline, popped the lid, and froze. Inside was a folded letter, written in youthful, clumsy penmanship. Still tidy, still full of care. It was a love letter. The sender, Charlie Lawson. The recipient, Kevin Scott. That was me. The envelope was still there too, sealed with a little cat sticker. It looked familiar. My hands trembled. Charlie, in the gentlest voice he'd used all day, offered a dry little commentary. You probably forgot we were classmates in middle school. I left that on your desk. You gave it to your deskmate. I had to take it back myself. Oh my God. That did happen. I did vaguely remember Charlie from middle school. And that letter. I'd seen it. But I thought it was for the class belle sitting next to me. I hadn't even opened it. Just shoved it into her desk. And now I realized that was a love letter for me. My brain short-circuited. Before I could process another thought, Charlie snatched the box out of my hands and said calmly, well, if you're not gonna shower, then we'll just skip to it. Hold. Didn't matter. He picked me up and tossed me straight onto the bed. No hesitation. No pretense. His shirt came off. His mouth was back on mine. And this time, I couldn't fight him off. It didn't matter what I said, what I did. I was drowned in him. Bitten, devoured, claimed. Somewhere in the haze, a random memory floated up. Justin Scott's message from earlier. Charlie Lawson probably likes you quite a bit. No kidding. The next morning, I woke up and pulled back the sheets. One glance at myself, and I was so mad I couldn't even curse. Bruises. Everywhere. Well, everywhere except my neck. Apparently that was too public. As I sat there fuming, Charlie appeared in the doorway, dressed to the nines. Suit crisp, tie perfect. Not a hair out of place. Not a single sign of last night's chaos. I opened my mouth to yell at him, and realized I couldn't. My throat was shot. He gave a rare laugh, eyebrows lifting in amusement as he shrugged, feigning innocence. Oh, what can I say? Family alliances. We're both just victims of circumstance. Victimless. I suddenly remembered how his relatives acted at the engagement party. Barely spoke to him. And now it all made sense. He was never forced into this. Not even close. Charlie Lawson. You stupid pig. The end.